She replaced her sister as a maid for one day, unaware the house owner is a billionaire who'd been watching her all along. Well, today's story is about a woman named Laura who thought she was just covering for her sick sister as a maid for one measly day. She believed she'd clean some rooms, earn a few dollars, and return to her ordinary life. But she had absolutely no idea that a billionaire had been watching her every single move. Not just watching, studying her, learning her, falling for her. This isn't just another rags to riches fairy tale. This is about what happens when raw authenticity crashes into unimaginable wealth, when genuine vulnerability meets untouchable power, when a woman who's been overlooked her entire life suddenly becomes the center of someone's universe. But here's the twist that will blow your mind. He wasn't just any billionaire. Grayson Vanguard was the kind of man who could buy entire cities, who made decisions that changed thousands of lives with a single phone call. Yet there he was, completely captivated by a woman who didn't even know his name, a woman who had no idea that her every gesture, every smile, every moment of quiet determination was being watched by someone who would move heaven and earth for her. What happens when she discovers the truth? When she realizes that her one day of service has caught the attention of the most powerful man she's ever encountered, when the walls between their worlds come crashing down in the most unexpected way. The transformation that follows will shock you. The choices she makes will inspire you, and the life lessons hidden in their story will change how you see your own worth forever. Before we dive into this incredible journey, hello my dear family, Mr. T here. I'm in a bind and I need your help to ensure that I and my family can have food to eat and be able to pay our bills and mortgage. Please, my dear family, kindly subscribe and watch this story to the end and comment where you are watching the story from. You are all I have, and God will bless you and your family. Thank you. Now, let me tell you something about Alora that nobody expected. She wasn't supposed to be the struggling one. 3 years ago, Alora Chun had been accepted to study architectural design at the State University. Full scholarship. Her portfolio of hand-drawn building sketches had impressed professors who called her gifted beyond her years. She should have been designing skyscrapers by now, not scrubbing floors. But life has a way of rewriting your story when you're not looking. Her father's construction business collapsed overnight when his business partner disappeared with their life savings. One day they were middle class, planning Alora's dorm room. The next, they were selling furniture to pay rent. Alora watched her dreams get packed away in boxes alongside their family photos. Education can wait, she told her parents, tearing up her acceptance letter. Family can't. That was Alora, always putting others first, even when it cost her everything. She took 3 jobs, morning shift at the local diner, afternoon cleaning offices, and evenings tutoring kids whose parents could afford what she'd lost. Her hands, once delicate from sketching blueprints, grew rough from dishwater and bleach. But her eyes, those warm brown eyes, never lost their spark of determination. Her older sister Talia had landed the coveted position at Vanguard Estate 18 months ago. The pay was incredible, more than their father used to make in construction. It covered their mother's diabetes medication, kept the lights on, and even allowed them to start a tiny savings account again. This job is our lifeline, Talia would say every morning, ironing her crisp black uniform. Mr. Vanguard's staff stays for decades. Benefits, security, respect. I'm not just cleaning, I'm building our future back. But Tuesday morning changed everything. Alora woke to her mother's panicked voice echoing through their cramped 2-bedroom apartment. She can't stop shaking, Alora. The fever won't break. Talia lay curled in bed, her skin flushed and burning. Food poisoning from the diner where she'd eaten dinner, the cheap place they could barely afford. She'd been vomiting all night. I have to go to work, Talia whispered, trying to sit up and immediately collapsing back onto her pillow. If I miss a day without notice, you'll get fired, Alora finished quietly. She knew the rules at these elite estates. Perfection or nothing. Their mother paced the tiny living room, wringing her hands. The Hendersons are already asking about next month's rent. If Talia loses this job, the weight of their reality pressed down like a heavy blanket. No job meant no money. No money meant losing their apartment. Losing the apartment meant their mother couldn't get her medication. It was a house of cards, and Talia's fever threatened to topple everything. Elora stared at Talia's uniform hanging on their bedroom door. They were roughly the same height, same build. She'd watched Talia practice her cleaning routines dozens of times, memorizing which products worked on marble, which cloths were for silver, how to arrange flowers without leaving fingerprints on crystal vases. "I'll go," Elora said suddenly. Both women stared at her. "You're joking," Talia croaked. "I'm not. One day. I keep your job safe, you recover, and by tomorrow everything goes back to normal." What Elora didn't say, what she couldn't say, was that part of her was curious. After years of living in survival mode, scraping and sacrificing, she wondered what it felt like to walk through a world of unlimited resources, to touch things that cost more than her family's annual income. She had no idea she was about to step into a world where someone very powerful had been waiting for her arrival. At 5:47 a.m., Elora stood before the towering iron gates of Vanguard State, her sister's uniform hanging loose on her smaller frame. The security guard barely glanced at her ID badge as the gates swung open with a whisper-quiet hum. Nothing could prepare her for what lay beyond. The estate stretched endlessly in every direction. Not just a house, but an entire private kingdom. The main residence rose 7 stories into morning sky, its glass facades reflecting clouds like captured dreams. But here's what stunned Elora most. It wasn't cold or intimidating. Every detail whispered of someone who understood beauty on a level she'd only glimpsed in her architectural textbooks. The curved driveway alone was wider than her entire apartment building. Water features wound between perfectly sculpted gardens, their gentle sounds creating a symphony that made her heart slow despite her nerves. This wasn't just wealth. This was art made livable. "First day?" asked Mrs. Chun, the head housekeeper, appearing beside her with silent efficiency. Elora's stomach dropped. Had she been caught already? I'm covering for Talia today. I know." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "Your sister mentioned you might fill in if she ever needed backup. Family takes care of family." She handed Elora a detailed schedule. "East Wing today. Mr. Vanguard's private floors. He's traveling, so you won't be disturbed." Relief flooded through her. The mysterious billionaire wasn't even home. But here's what Mrs. Chen didn't mention, and what Elora couldn't have known. Those travel plans had changed an hour ago. The East Wing felt like walking through a museum where someone actually lived. Each room told a story. The library with first edition books in languages she couldn't read. The art studio with half-finished paintings still wet on easels. The music room with 3 different pianos arranged like old friends having a conversation. Elora moved through her tasks with growing fascination. This wasn't just cleaning. It was caring for someone's private world. She polished a mahogany desk where important decisions were made, arranged fresh roses in a crystal vase that probably cost more than her father's truck, dusted frames holding photographs of places she'd only seen in magazines. But it was in the conservatory that everything changed. The room was a celebration of light and life, floor-to-ceiling windows, exotic plants reaching toward the sun, and a breakfast setup that looked like something from a luxury hotel. Elora was arranging the morning tea service when she noticed something unexpected. Architectural blueprints scattered across a side table. Her breath caught. These weren't just any designs. They were plans for affordable housing complexes, community centers, schools. Projects that would help families like hers. She leaned closer, her trained eye immediately spotting the genius in the structural innovations. Most people wouldn't understand what they're looking at. Elora spun around so fast that her elbow caught the edge of the tea tray. The delicate porcelain cup, probably worth more than her monthly salary, teetered on the edge of disaster. Time slowed in that suspended moment. As the cup began its fatal journey toward the marble floor, a strong hand appeared from nowhere, catching it inches before impact. The same hand that had drawn those brilliant architectural plans. Alora found herself staring into the most intense gray eyes she'd ever seen. The man holding the rescued cup wasn't what she expected at all. No stern expression or cold disapproval. Instead, there was something almost amused in his gaze. "Good reflexes," she whispered, her heart hammering. "Yours or mine?" he asked, and she heard something warm in his voice that made her forget, for just a moment, that she was an imposter in his world. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. His clothes were expensive but not showy, dark jeans, white button-down, sleeves rolled up like he'd been working with his hands. But it was his eyes that held her captive. They looked at her like he was seeing something he'd been searching for. "I should explain," she started. "You're not Talia," he said simply. Her world tilted. "I can explain everything. My sister is sick, and we couldn't afford for her to lose his job. And I know I shouldn't be here, but—" "Breathe," he said gently, still holding the rescued cup. "I'm Grayson, and I've been hoping to meet you for a very long time." What did that mean? How could he have been hoping to meet her when she'd never set foot in his world before today? "I've been hoping to meet you for a very long time." The confusion in Alora's eyes told Grayson she had no memory of him. Of course she didn't. Why would she remember a stranger in an expensive car who'd watched her sketch building designs on napkins during her lunch breaks at Murphy's Diner? For the past 8 months, Grayson Vanguard had been living a lie. Not the lie everyone assumed, that he was just another heartless billionaire who'd inherited his way to the top. The real lie was much more dangerous. He'd been pretending he didn't care about the people whose lives his decisions affected. It started innocently enough. Grayson had a habit of driving to the neighborhoods where his construction projects would go up, wanted to understand the communities he was changing. Corporate boards showed him numbers and projections, but numbers didn't tell him if Mrs. Rodriguez would lose her flower shop, or the kids had anywhere safe to play after he demolished their lot. That's how he'd first seen Alora. She was sitting in Murphy's Diner, the kind of place he'd never normally enter, with its cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like burnt water. But she wasn't just eating. She was creating. Her lunch break was spent sketching modifications to building plans she'd printed from free architectural websites, improving designs with nothing but a ballpoint pen and raw talent. Grayson watched from his car as she turned a basic housing complex into something beautiful and functional. She added green spaces where children could play, modified the entrance to accommodate wheelchairs, redesigned the parking to include community garden plots. Every stroke of her pen showed someone who understood that buildings weren't just structures. They were homes for real people with real lives. He'd return the next day, and the next, not because he was lonely, though God knows the penthouse felt like a beautiful prison most nights. Not because he was bored with his world of board meetings and charity galas where people smiled at his money, not his mind. He came back because watching Laura work felt like witnessing magic. She would study design for 10 minutes, then transform it in 20. Her modifications weren't just clever, they were compassionate. She thought about single mothers carrying groceries, elderly residents needing shorter walks to mailboxes, teenagers needing spaces where they wouldn't get into trouble. This woman understood architecture the way he understood business, not as transactions, but as relationships. The ethical dilemma ate at him. He could have approached her properly, offered her a job, change her life with a conversation. But Grayson had learned the hard way that his money changed how people saw him. Women who laughed at his jokes suddenly became funnier when they learned his net worth. Friends who challenged his ideas became agreeable when they realized he could fund their dreams. He wanted to know who Alora really was before she knew who he was. So he'd research her family situation, learn about her father's failed business, her sacrificed scholarship, her sister's employment at his estate. When he quietly instructed Mrs. Chun to prioritize Talia for next opening, he told himself it was business strategy, investing in talented people's families. But standing here now, watching Laura's eyes widen as she processed his words, Grayson knew the truth. He hadn't been conducting research. He'd been falling for a woman who didn't know he existed. The loneliness he'd carried for years, the isolation that came with never knowing if people wanted him or his fortune, had been erased by watching someone who created beauty with nothing but determination and a borrowed pen. He could no longer stay hidden behind car windows and financial arrangements. "How?" she whispered. Grayson set the rescued teacup down carefully, his decision made. "Because I've been watching you change the world one sketch at a time. Because I've been watching you change the world one sketch at a time." Laura's hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from impossible weight of being truly seen by someone who had every reason to overlook her existence. "You're him," she whispered. "You're the one who's been funding the community housing projects downtown." Grayson's eyebrows shot up. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've been studying every building permit filed in this city for 2 years. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. "I recognize the architectural signatures, the material specifications, the community-focused modifications. Someone with serious money has been quietly revolutionizing affordable housing, and they've been using designs that look suspiciously like improvements I've been sketching." For the first time in years, Grayson found himself genuinely surprised. "You've been tracking my projects?" "I've been trying to figure out who was smart enough to see that good design doesn't have to be expensive design." Alora's eyes lit up with a passion that transformed her entire face. Whoever was behind those projects understood that architecture isn't just about buildings. It's about dignity. The conservatory fell silent except for the gentle sound of water features outside. Grayson had spent months watching her, but he'd never expected her to be watching his work in return. "Show me," he said quietly. "What?" "Show me what you see. In my designs." Elora glanced around the conservatory, then walked to the scattered blueprints on the side table. Her fingers traced the lines with the reverence of someone handling precious artifacts. "This community center," she said, pointing to a detailed plan. "You included a commercial kitchen, but you positioned it to serve both the internal programs and external food trucks. That's brilliant. It creates revenue streams while feeding the community." Grayson moved to stand beside her, close enough to catch the faint scent of her shampoo, something simple and clean that made him think of rain on summer afternoons. "But you could improve the traffic flow," she continued, pulling out a pen without asking permission, "if you move the main entrance 15 degrees. She began sketching modifications directly onto his blueprints. The natural light would hit the children's activity area during peak hours, and the noise from the kitchen wouldn't interfere with the quiet study spaces. She was redesigning a $1 million project with a ballpoint pen, and every change was perfect. "My God," Grayson breathed. "You see it." "See what?" "The whole picture. Most architects design buildings. You design communities." Elora looked up from the blueprints, and for the first time, he saw her not as the nervous maid who'd almost dropped his teacup, but as a brilliant woman who'd been wasting her talents serving coffee and scrubbing floors. "Come with me," he said impulsively. "Where?" "Somewhere we can talk properly." He led her through corridors she hadn't seen during her cleaning duties, past rooms filled with artwork and windows that framed the city skyline like living paintings. They ended up in a private lounge with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather chairs positioned to catch the afternoon light. "Sit," Grayson said, pouring 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher. "Tell me why you gave up architecture school." Elora hesitated, then settled into a chair that probably cost more than her family's monthly rent. "How do you know about that?" "I know about your father's business failing. I know about your scholarship. I know you've been working 3 jobs to support your family." He sat across from her, leaning forward intently. "What I don't know is why someone with your talent is cleaning houses instead of designing them." "Because talent doesn't pay medical bills," she said simply. "My mother needs insulin. My father needs his dignity back. My sister needs job security. Dreams are luxuries I can't afford. What if they weren't? What do you mean? Grayson was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. What if I told you that every housing project you've been tracking, every community center you've been analyzing, every design improvement you've been sketching, what if all of that was me trying to find a way to offer you something? Alora's breath caught. Offer me what? A partnership. Your vision, my resources. Your talent, my platform. He paused, his voice dropping to something almost vulnerable. Your authenticity in a world that's forgotten what that looks like. The air between them crackled with possibility. Alora felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Not just the floor of an expensive mansion, but the entire foundation of her carefully constructed life. Why? She whispered. Because I've spent years building things that make money. I want to build something that makes a difference. His gray eyes held her steadily. And I think you're the only person who can show me how. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken promises and dangerous possibilities. Everything was about to change. And I think you're the only person who can show me how. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meanings neither of them had fully acknowledged until this moment. Alora felt her heart racing as she searched Grayson's face for any sign that this was just another wealthy man's whim. Instead, she found something raw and honest that made her chest tighten. You don't even know me, she whispered. I know you gave up your dreams so your family could survive. I know you spend your lunch breaks redesigning buildings to help people you've never met. I know you see possibilities where others see problems. His voice dropped lower. I know you're the most beautiful woman I've ever encountered. And it has nothing to do with how you look. Alora's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like this, like she was something precious and powerful all at once. Grayson. She stood up, needing distance, needing air, needing to think clearly. But he rose with her, and suddenly they were standing closer than before, the space between them charged with electricity. I've been watching you for months, he continued, his voice rough with honesty. Telling myself it was research, that I was being strategic. But the truth is, I've been falling for a woman who didn't know I existed. Her hand reached out instinctively, touching his chest where she could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. I'm just a maid in your house. No. His hand covered hers, pressing her palm firmly against his heartbeat. You're an architect who happens to be wearing a uniform. You're a daughter who sacrificed everything for love. You're a woman who sees beauty in broken things and finds ways to make them whole. The barriers between their worlds, the ones built from money and status and expectations, began crumbling with each word. This is crazy, she breathed, but she didn't pull her hand away. The craziest thing I've ever done, he agreed, his free hand rising to trace the line of her jaw with infinite gentleness. And the most right thing I've ever felt. When his lips met hers, it wasn't the desperate grab of passion she'd expected. It was soft questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Alora had spent so long being careful, being responsible, being invisible, that this moment of being truly wanted felt like coming alive. She kissed him back with 3 years of suppressed dreams and postponed hopes, and felt his sharp intake of breath as she pressed closer. His arms encircled her waist, pulling her against him as if she were something he'd been searching for his entire life. Alora, he murmured against her lips, her name sounding like a prayer in his voice. They moved together toward the deep leather sofa, their kisses growing more urgent, more desperate. When he laid her down gently, his eyes never leaving hers, she felt like the most precious thing in his world. His hands explored her with reverent touches, tracing the curve of her neck, the line of her collarbone, the gentle swell of her breast through the thin fabric of her uniform. Every caress was a question, and every soft sound she made was an answer. You're so beautiful, he whispered, his lips following the path his hands had traced. So perfect. Elora's fingers tangled in his hair as waves of sensation washed over her. This wasn't just physical desire. It was recognition, acceptance, the intoxicating feeling of being completely seen and completely wanted. When they finally came together, it was with a tenderness that spoke of souls connecting rather than just bodies meeting. He moved with her as if they were dancing to music only they could hear, their whispered endearments and gentle gasps creating a symphony of intimacy. In that moment, there was no billionaire and no maid, no mansion and no tiny apartment, just two people who had found in each other everything they hadn't known they were missing. Hours later, as the first pale light of dawn began filtering through the tall windows, reality started seeping back into their private world. Elora stirred in Grayson's arms, her head on his chest, his fingers still stroking her hair. "What happens now?" she asked quietly, her voice vulnerable in the growing light. Grayson's arms tightened around her protectively, but she could feel the tension returning to his body as the outside world pressed in on their perfect bubble. Everything was about to get complicated. "What happens now?" she asked quietly, her voice vulnerable in the growing light. Grayson's phone buzzed against the coffee table, shattering the intimate quiet. Then it buzzed again. And again. "I should—" He started to reach for it, but Elora caught his wrist. "Wait. Before the world comes crashing back in, I need to know something." Her brown eyes searched his face. "Is this real? Or am I just your latest charity project?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Elora, how can you even?" "Because I did some research, too." She sat up, pulling the throw around her shoulders. 3 months ago, mysterious benefactors started paying for my mother's insulin. 2 months ago, my father got a construction contract he never applied for. Last month, Talia's position at this estate suddenly became permanent with full medical benefits. Grayson's stomach dropped. "You think I think you've been playing puppet master with my family's life, while I had no idea you existed." Her voice was steady, but he could see the hurt flickering in her eyes. "So tell me the truth. Did you orchestrate all of this so you could have me?" The accusation stung, because it held just enough truth to be dangerous. "The medical bills and your father's contract. Yes, that was me, but not for the reasons you think." "Then why?" He ran his hands through his hair, struggling to find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. "Because I watch you sacrifice everything for people you love, and I couldn't stand seeing talent like yours wasted because the world is unfair. So you decided to fix my life without my consent? I decided to level a playing field that was rigged against you from the start." His phone buzzed again, more insistently. "But what happened between us last night? That was real. That was you and me, not your circumstances and my money." Elora studied his face, searching for deception. What she found instead was a man who looked terrified of losing something he just discovered he couldn't live without. The phone's insistent buzzing finally forced Grayson to answer. "This better be an emergency." "Sir, we have a situation." His assistant's voice was tight with tension. "The Henderson Group is demanding an immediate meeting. They know about the community housing projects, and they're threatening to pull out of the commercial development deal unless you cease all charitable activities that compete with their low-income rental empire." Grayson's face went stone cold. "How much are we talking about?" $12 billion in potential revenue. The board is convening an emergency session in 2 hours. Elora watched the transformation in real time, the tender man who'd held her through the night disappearing behind the mask of a corporate strategist. This was the world she'd stepped into, a world where their night together could cost him $12 billion if the wrong people found out. "I'll be there," he said, ending the call. The silence stretched between them until Elora spoke quietly. "The Henderson Group, they own half the slum properties in the city. You know them?" "I know they've been buying up affordable housing and letting it decay so they can charge desperate families premium rent for substandard living." Her voice hardened. "They're exactly the kind of people your community projects are designed to compete against." Grayson nodded grimly. "And now they know I'm a threat. What will you do?" The question hung in the air with the weight of everything they'd shared and everything they stood to lose. Grayson looked at her, hair mussed from sleep, wrapped in his throw, still glowing from their night together, and realized she wasn't just asking about his business decision. She was asking if he'd choose her world over his. "I need to get dressed," he said finally, "and you need to get back to your sister before anyone realizes." "Mr. Vanguard?" Mrs. Chen's voice echoed from the hallway, getting closer. "Sir, there are reporters at the front gate asking about overnight guests." Elora's face went white. "Oh, God, if they take pictures, if this gets out, your sister's job, your family's reputation." Grayson finished grimly. "I know." They could hear Mrs. Chen's footsteps approaching the lounge. In seconds, their secret would be exposed to the one person whose discretion they couldn't guarantee. "But here's what I want you to do right now. If you're invested in finding out whether Grayson chooses love over money, whether Laura's family survives the scandal, and how they navigate a world designed to keep them apart, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because the next part of this story will determine if true love can survive when everything is on the line. Quick," Grayson whispered, pulling Elora toward a hidden door behind the bookshelf. "This leads to the service corridor." As they heard Mrs. Chen's hand on the door handle, Elora realized her one day as a replacement maid had become the first day of a completely different life. Whether that life would include Grayson remained to be seen. As they heard Mrs. Chen's hand on the door handle, Elora realized her one day as a replacement maid had become the first day of a completely different life. The hidden corridor led them to the estate's original servants' quarters, a forgotten wing that hadn't been used in decades. Dusty furniture covered in white sheets created ghostly shapes in the dim light filtering through grimy windows. "I haven't been in here since I was 12, Grayson said, pulling the sheet off an old drafting table. "My grandfather used this space to plan his construction projects." Elora ran her fingers along the table's scarred surface, recognizing the marks left by countless architectural drawings. "This is where it all started, isn't it? Your family's empire. And where it might end if I make the wrong choice today." But instead of looking defeated, Grayson had an energy about him that Elora hadn't seen before. He was pacing, his mind clearly racing. "What if we didn't have to choose?" he said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "The Henderson Group thinks they have me cornered because they assume I need their money more than I need my principles." He turned to face her, his eyes bright with possibility. "But what if we prove them wrong?" "We? You said yourself that good design doesn't have to be expensive. What if we created something so innovative, so efficient, that it makes their slum properties look obsolete?" Elora felt her pulse quicken. "You're talking about revolution, not just renovation." "I'm talking about partnership." He pulled more sheets off the forgotten furniture, revealing architectural tools, reference books, even an old computer that somehow still worked. "Real partnership. Your vision, my resources, but this time we build it together from the ground up." For the next 6 hours, they forgot about reporters and board meetings and family obligations. They worked side by side, Elora sketching modifications while Grayson ran cost analyses. They designed modular housing units that could be manufactured efficiently but customized for each community's needs. "Look at this," Elora said, showing him her latest drawing. "If we use recycled shipping containers as the base structure but add these expansion modules." "The cost per unit drops by 60%, Grayson finished, studying her calculations. "And families can add space as their needs grow." They were building more than housing designs. They were building trust, respect, and something that felt suspiciously like a future together. Around noon, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway with a tray of food. Instead of shock or disapproval, her expression was knowing. "The reporters left 2 hours ago," she said calmly, setting down sandwiches and coffee. "I told them Mr. Vanguard was in meetings all night and never had any overnight guests." Elora looked up from her sketches, worried. "Mrs. Chen, I can explain." "No need." The older woman smiled. "I've worked for this family for 20 years. I know the difference between scandal and love." After she left, Elora stared at Grayson. "Your staff lied for you? They protect what matters. He touched her hand gently. And apparently you matter. That afternoon, Grayson made a choice that shocked everyone, including himself. He walked into the emergency board meeting and announced he was rejecting the Henderson Group's ultimatum. Furthermore, he told the stunned board members, we're accelerating the community housing initiative. I've found a partner whose innovations will revolutionize affordable construction. Who? Demanded the board chairman. Alora Chun, architect, visionary, and the smartest person I've ever met. The room erupted in protest about her lack of credentials, her family background, the impropriety of the situation. Grayson listened to it all with growing clarity about who he wanted to be. Meeting adjourned, he said finally, anyone who can't support this direction is welcome to tender their resignation. When he returned to the hidden wing, he found Alora had transformed the dusty space into a proper design studio. Drawings covered every surface, showing communities that looked nothing like traditional housing projects and everything like places where families could thrive. How did the meeting go? She asked without looking up from her work. I just bet my entire company on you, he said. She finally looked up, her eyes wide. And best investment I've ever made. Outside, the estate hummed with new energy. Staff members who'd worked in quiet isolation for years began collaborating, sharing ideas about how their own skills could contribute to projects that actually mattered. Change was happening everywhere. Change was happening everywhere. 6 months later, Alora stood in the middle of what used to be one of the city's most neglected neighborhoods. Where crumbling apartments once housed desperate families, a vibrant community now thrived. Children played in safe courtyards designed with their laughter in mind. Elderly residents tended community gardens that fed entire families. Young mothers walked to work without fear, their children in daycare centers built into the same structures where they lived. The Henderson Group filed for bankruptcy yesterday, Grayson said, joining her on the observation deck of their latest community center. Good. Alora didn't feel guilty about it. Maybe now their tenants can afford to live with dignity. Below them, families were moving into homes that cost half what Henderson had charged for slums, but offered twice the quality of life. The modular design Alora had sketched in that dusty wing had become the blueprint for affordable housing across 3 states. There's something else, Grayson said, pulling out his phone. We got the call an hour ago. Alora looked at the screen. The mayor's office, the governor, even federal housing officials, all wanted to discuss expanding their model nationwide. We did it, she whispered. You did it. I just wrote the checks. She turned to face him, this man who'd seen her potential when she'd forgotten herself. We both know that's not true. They'd learned something profound over these months of building together. Real wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or stock portfolios. It was measured in the number of lives you touched, the problems you solved, the hope you created in places where hope had died. Grayson had traded $12 billion in potential profits for something infinitely more valuable. The satisfaction of using his resources to heal instead of hoard. And Alora? She'd discovered that stepping outside everything safe and familiar hadn't destroyed her. It had revealed who she'd always been meant to become. I have something for you, Grayson said, reaching into his jacket. Alora expected a ring. What she got instead was a set of architectural blueprints. The Chun Institute for Community Design, she read aloud. What is this? Your school. Full scholarships for students from families like yours. Faculty positions for architects who understand that buildings should serve people, not profit margins. His voice was soft with emotion. I want your name on something permanent. Something that will outlast both of us. Tears sprang to her eyes. Not because of the honor, but because he understood what would truly matter to her, ensuring other kids like her wouldn't have to choose between family and dreams. There's one condition, he added. What? The director position comes with a house. Beautiful, practical, designed by someone who knows the difference between luxury and comfort. He smiled. I was hoping you might share it with me. Alora looked around at the community, they'd built together, messy, imperfect, but gloriously real. Just like love that transcends every boundary society tries to build. Yes, she said simply. As we wrap up this incredible journey, I want you to remember something. Alora's story started with her feeling invisible, overlooked, trapped by circumstances beyond her control. But she made one brave choice, to step outside her comfort zone for just one day. That single act of courage changed everything. Your life might feel ordinary right now. Your talents might feel unnoticed. But authentic people living with genuine purpose have a power that money can't buy and status can't touch. When you show up as your real self, the right people will see you. The right opportunities will find you. Drop a comment and tell me, what's one brave choice you could make today that might change your tomorrow? And don't forget to subscribe, because every week we're sharing stories that prove extraordinary lives start with ordinary courage.